Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast. Learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Number 137, and I had the pleasure of talking to Julia Marie, a medium, mentor, and spiritual healer who experienced a profound spiritual awakening in 1989, which transformed the course of her life. She shared over 3 decades of metaphysical insight in her memoir, Signals from My Soul, offering a candid and relatable guide to awakening and inner guidance. Julia's work empowers others to trust their spiritual senses, connect with their soul, and embrace a journey that's already unfolding within them. Enjoy this delightful conversation with Julia and I, and thank you for watching and listening. Hello and welcome to Julia. How are you, Julia?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again. I'm glad you're doing much better. We were just talking about the transition of travel and how it can take a toll on us. And I think it does for all of us in many different ways. So I'm glad you do better.
Thanks.
I was curious to get into your conversation, into your world, in the depth that you have, not only in terms of connecting with spirit and guides and the esoteric world, but also the journey it took for you to write the book that you've written that we see behind you there. And that process of perhaps sharing it on a deeper level with the world, because it's written, it's out there, it's available, it's accessible to so many now. What was that process like for you?
Well, let's start with I never intended to write a book, nor did I think any of my experiences would be of value to anyone other than myself. And what I discovered that I was wrong about that.
Mm.
People have responded in a very positive way to the material that I put in the book, and many of them identify with some of my experiences, and a lot of them are now able to, they have a framework that they can use to learn how their spiritual guidance works for them. So
Right.
it's been overall a good result, but
Yeah.
it was a long time coming.
Yeah.
It only took me 30 years.
So, what was that journey like for you to not only be open and connected with your spirit guides and have that dialogue and have it be not your normal part of life, to going, oh, there's something different about me and how I'm moving through the world and conversations I'm having with people versus what others are doing? What was that aha moment for you?
Well, I went from normal, if normal can be described as less than 2 standard deviations from the mean. Anybody who's taken psychology knows
Okay.
that statistical reference.
Okay.
Normal is within 2 standard deviations from the mean.
Right.
So
Wow.
anything outside of that is abnormal or
Okay.
not normal.
Got
So
it.
I started out in the normal world, in the 3D world, in the, as Harry Potter would say, the Muggle world.
Yes.
So I was a Muggle,
Okay.
and we all begin as brilliant sparks of light that choose to come here and have an experience.
Mhm.
And in our early childhood, most of us are conditioned out of our own
Right.
awareness, wisdom, connection to our soul.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tragic, but it's fixable
Yeah.
because we're all wired the same. That's what I've discovered over the years. I am no more special than anybody else. We are all hardwired to receive signals from our soul.
Right.
And we are receiving that information. We're just not perceiving it.
Mm-hmm.
Or we are perceiving it and we're discounting it and calling it just our imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage people to maybe explore those experiences with the curiosity of a child.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid and see where that exploration might take you. Because we are indeed multidimensional beings. We are not simply our 3D aspect.
No.
This is only one very small part of a very big being.
Yes.
And we've forgotten that. That's all.
Right.
Yeah. So
What was it? Mm-hmm.
my early experiences were more than a gentle wake-up call. They didn't have a name for them when they first happened to me back in 1989. Yes, it was last century that I was awakened. Yes, I've just aged myself, but oh well, it's everybody awakens in their own time.
Absolutely. All in due time.
Uh-huh. And it's always perfect when it happens. The timing
Absolutely.
is always perfect. If
Yeah.
people are listening to this conversation right now and they're having the feeling that their life somehow doesn't fit, or they have this niggling impression that there's got to be more to life than what they're experiencing, then I'm going to say it's highly likely they're on the verge of their own awakening experience.
Right. Right.
So, those spiritually transformative experiences that happened to me
Mm-hmm.
weren't just a gentle wake up call, because obviously I'd been receiving the nudges and I'd been ignoring them or chalking them up to my imagination.
Yeah.
And because I personally believe that I had chosen maybe a pathway that was going to take me so far away from whatever my soul intended for this incarnation,
Mm-hmm.
that a 2x4 with a nail in the end was required.
My gosh.
And a
Wow.
loud shout, wake up,
Wow.
wake up. Yeah. So that's literally what happened.
What were the smaller nudges in hindsight at that moment? Because I do want to talk about that too. What were the smaller nudges that you disregarded as, like you said, imagination, or somebody else transplanted that thought, or you think it came from an external influence like the media or somebody else? What were those other little ones that are potentially the most common ones that people often get from your experience?
Well, and the other thing I'll add to that is misinterpreting the signals based on my level of consciousness. So that's
Ah,
another big one too. Okay. So
okay.
the sense that there's something more to life than the experience you're having, the sense that maybe somehow your life doesn't fit, like something's out of place,
Hmm.
those are very common signs your soul is trying to get your attention.
Right.
Now, I had the urge to, um, it just came over me basically. I want to speak for people who have no voice. That's
Hmm.
a random thought, but the only way that I could translate that was to become an attorney. Because in
Hmm.
my 3D world, the only people that spoke for people who couldn't speak for
Sure.
themselves were lawyers.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I put myself through the torture of law school as a single mother in the military on active duty,
Ooh, wow. Okay.
and managed to complete that assignment and pass the bar and start a small family law practice. But it was around that time that the 2x4 with the nail came my way because obviously I was so far away from where I needed to be. But
Mm-hmm.
I was following the promptings of my soul
Mm-hmm.
by doing the law school thing without knowing I was following a prompting from my soul.
Right.
So one of
Right.
the things I want to let people know is don't worry. If you get it wrong, it'll come around again.
Mm-hmm.
So don't worry, just keep trying.
Right.
Eventually, you'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you do at that moment of time, as you so boldly described? I've often used the reference of 2x4s to some of my clients and some of my people that I support, but I've never used the analogy of the nail on the end of it. So
Oh,
that
yes.
you just upped the
Yes.
game right there for me. So I'm going to go with what happened at that moment for you when you had that realization of, oh my gosh, something else needs to happen here.
Well, that's when the spiritually transformative experiences came into my life.
Hmm.
I had spontaneous activation of what I later discovered was healing energy. My
Okay.
hands would turn on, my fingers would swell when I would get around people. I had round red circles appear on my body where I later found the chakras where they were about
Mm,
maybe inch and a half, 2 inches across, right?
yeah.
And a red stripe of energy that started moving up my back.
Hmm.
It took some months for it to reach my head. It was a very painful experience.
Right.
The heat was unbearable. I'm pretty sure that what happened was some kind of a Kundalini
Hmm.
awakening,
Hmm.
but when I was going through it, I didn't have a clue.
Right.
And then invisible people started showing up in my living room, only now I could see them and have conversations with them. And
Right.
so now I think I'm going crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was pretty scary, pretty extreme, I would say.
Mm.
I'm sure I'm not the only one that's had this
Hmm.
level of
Hmm.
experience, but the first thing that does is engender fear.
Yes.
So I asked for a sign, I asked for answers. When I got those things, I realized, oh, I'm having a conversation with some sort of invisible field of intelligence that can respond to me.
Hmm.
Well, now this is interesting.
Hmm.
Let me see how far I can take this.
Right.
So, when I was
Right.
told basically to sell my house and my law practice and to follow the guidance within, I figured, okay, I'm going to shove all my chips in because that's just how I roll. And that's what I did. So, I've had no visible means of support for over 3 decades, and yet I've never lacked for anything.
Mm.
Am I recommending that people go out and quit their jobs because they think they're having a spiritual awakening? No.
Yes. Yes.
Let's get that
Please
very
don't.
clear.
Please
I
don't.
am
Yes.
not saying quit your job. I'm saying take the time to pay more attention to the signals that are coming to you so that you can live your life in a more intentful way, I guess I
Hmm.
would say, a more
Hmm.
conscious way.
Right.
Yeah,
And more aligned to your own soul's purpose.
exactly.
Because we all have a reason to be here
Hmm.
and something very specific and very intentional. What do you think yours is?
I would say that, well, I know I'm a member of the transition team
Yeah.
to help the transition of the consciousness from where it is to where it's headed.
Yeah.
And I also know that I'm a messenger.
Mm.
So I feel like my mission is to demonstrate that woo isn't woo woo. Woo woo is actually normal, which means something that people are calling fringe activity is
Mhm.
actually less than 2 standard deviations from the mean. And it's
Mm.
where we should all be operating with all 10 of our senses, not just 5 of them.
Right. Right.
So that's my mission, my message.
Yeah. How was that when you made that transition? I want to say, in making that, throwing all the chips in, and this is how it's going to roll out in Julia's life, selling your house and picking up sticks and moving based on this higher energy awareness. What was the narrative, or what was your conversation in relationships like of you making such bold decisions?
The other people in my life, you mean?
Uh-huh.
Um, my best friend is still my best friend. So I'm grateful.
Mm.
My daughter still speaks to me. I mean,
Mhm.
she was young enough to be involved in some of those early moves because she was still in the house.
Right.
So, and I made new friends along the way, and the people that didn't understand what was happening, well, that's one of the common benchmarks of an awakening process.
Right.
The people in your life do one of two things. They will either shift with you as your vibration changes,
Mhm.
or they fall away.
Right.
And it's nothing personal to you. It
Right.
just it just is part
Yeah.
of what happens.
But naturally, as human beings who crave community and connection, we perhaps take it upon ourselves. And I see that there's a deeper purpose and meaning as to why all that gets evoked, because it's triggering it within us,
Mm-hmm.
which is our learning and our lessons to resolve that. How did you how did you manage that for you? Granted, yes, you were supported and you still have your friends and that community was still there as Julia. Did you seek out further understanding under what realms, and how did you get in contact with getting support in the physical space?
When all this went down for me, there wasn't a whole lot of support out there.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, we're talking 1989.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
there's no internet.
yeah,
There's no YouTube videos I could go
that's right.
and look at.
That's right.
Okay. So all I had was the nearest metaphysical bookstore and whatever books were on the shelf in the store.
Mm.
So that was my resource. And I learned very quickly by speaking with the lovely ladies that owned the store that not even they were just because they were quote unquote on a spiritual path doesn't mean I was supposed to share everything that was happening to me with them.
Mm.
So I learned very quickly that I needed to maybe filter my experiences, which is probably why it took 30 years to write the book, because there are some things in there that I never intended to share
Right.
publicly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So my support community consisted of the invisible people that showed up like clockwork every night in my living room, teaching me the things that I put in the book,
Right.
and the metaphysical store with all the books on the bookshelf
Yeah.
that I would get a teaching. I would work it through my own internal
Mm.
meditations, and I would come to insights and awareness. And when I thought I grasped the concept, I would go to the metaphysical store and I would scan the books, and one of them would light up, or
Mm.
sometimes they would fall off the shelf.
Right.
And I would open the book. And usually, when I did that, it would open to the page that was talking about whatever it was I'd just come to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that was how the universe validated the truth of my experience,
Nice.
that I wasn't just making things up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And perhaps the more you lean into it, the more confirmations and confidence
Yes.
you have in
Yes.
there. skill.
Mm-hmm.
What are the main attributes do you feel that put you in alignment to who you are and your purpose in connecting with your craft?
I would say faith that what I was experiencing was real. And I'm going to say trust.
Mhm.
Trust in the process that organically unfolded for me that literally led to the expansion of my clairs, all of
Mhm.
my subtle
Yeah.
senses happened in a natural way. I didn't have any external teachers. Not until I started mediumship did I have any human teacher at all.
Mhm.
And that's also part of my message. You don't have to go run out there and find somebody to teach you what you already know but have forgotten. You simply need to find a way to remember it. And the
Yes.
universe will help you.
Right.
Yep.
So it's ultimately to be in active dialogue with the
Yes.
unknown senses and and the way I see it is other fractals and other parts of yourself
Mm-hmm.
is to engage with that and allow the judgments of others who may witness that. One having that internal dialogue with themselves, drop whatever you think they're going to think and say, and just let it go. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's our journey on this path, nobody
Yes.
else's, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing I tell people all the time in mostly in the intuition classes, because that's where people come when they're first starting to want to learn to work with their own wiring, but they might still be reliant upon an external reader or somebody to tell them what they need to do in their life.
Mm,
Sometimes that's when I find them. And I will say to them, the one thing that no one can take from you is your connection to your own higher wisdom.
right.
Now, you can give that power away to
Sure you
someone
can.
else if you choose to, but no one can take it from you.
Right.
So learn how your connection works, continue to build that connection and build trust in that connection. And the day will come when you may seek a reader, but then it's only to validate what your understanding is of the situation, not necessarily to tell you what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting hearing your perspective and your wise words of wisdom, not only because you've lived it and gone through it, but perhaps it's taking the experience full circle. And ultimately, it's gonna you can seek outside, but ultimately you gotta lean into your own trust
My
and build that
tagline
relationship itself.
my tagline is live from the inside out.
Mhm.
So we carry everything we need for
Yeah.
our journey home. It's hidden in plain view. It's right under our noses. It's in our heart. It's in our body. We have all of our records are stored in the vehicle we're walking around in right now.
Hmm.
Everything we need to know
Hmm.
is contained in our own personal library.
Right. So while we have this personal library and
Mm-hmm.
while the world has completely shifted, because I echo my sentiments and maybe I'm aging myself because I remember my days in those in your era too of what it was like seeking more information in that realm. We fast forward half a cent, half yeah, 20, half a decade, if that
35 years. Yeah. Yep.
ish. And we've shifted so much with so much information out there. And perhaps that's a good thing or not. How would you recognize for somebody who is seeking, or what words of wisdom would you give for somebody seeking to getting support and learning more about themselves, their clairs, their intuition, or the awareness, or what they may be feeling? What words of wisdom would you share?
The first thing I would say is don't stop necessarily on the first website you come to.
Okay.
I'm pretty leery of anybody who's been less than 10 years on their path
Mm-hmm.
because it takes at least that long to really have a competent understanding of what's happening.
Yeah.
You
Right.
can't get that in 2 to 3 years. You might be able to have extended access to the information that's out there, but to really understand how it works,
Yes.
you've got to have some experience. So that would be the first thing I would say to people. I
Mm-hmm.
try not to have guests on my podcast with less than 10 years experience
Mm. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they don't have a solid, they haven't built their foundation yet.
Right.
So anybody can put together an intuitive development class.
Program. Mm-hmm.
Anybody can do it. There's plenty of them out there. You can just
Yeah.
borrow a little here and there.
Yeah.
But does that mean that you can explain to someone who's trying to understand how their clairaudience works or how their clairsentience works or suggest to them things that they might want to try?
Mm-hmm.
That only comes with experience. So that
Right.
would be my first recommendation.
Yeah.
Use your discernment,
Mm-hmm.
feel into the image of the person on the website and see how they make you feel.
Yes.
And if you get an odd feeling, click to the next one. There's plenty of them out there.
There's lots.
Yeah.
There's lots. Yeah.
I personally think there's too much information out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tsunami of useless, misleading,
Mm.
sometimes harmful
Right.
information that's out there, and people are trusting the people that are on the path before them to do right by them, but that's not always going to be the case. So
Right.
always be discerning.
Yes.
Ask
Yeah.
to be led, ask to be shown, and you will be helped by your guidance, but you've got to
Right.
ask
That's
for the
right.
help. It's not automatic. You
Mm-hmm.
have to ask.
Always.
Yeah. Well,
Always. Absolutely.
I like to say the first law of the universe is not to interfere with the life stream of another.
That's right.
So if I'm a higher being, I can't help you unless you invite me to help you.
Yes.
So I say always ask.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. It's the same scenario here on the
Sure.
planet, right? So if you're having dinner
As
somewhere,
above, so below. Yep.
there's that too. But if you're having dinner somewhere and you see somebody else's plate full of carbohydrates, you're not going to go off and put vegetables on their plate without them asking. Like,
That's true.
it's the same principle.
Yep. That's true.
We get to have this opportunity where we get this free will
Mm-hmm.
to make the choices that we want to make. Yeah.
Exactly.
What are your intentions with you writing your book and sharing your story and all the subsequent courses and additional training and thing that you've done over the years? What is it you want people to learn and what is it you would like them to walk away from having either read your book or worked with you or been on your listened to your content?
I want them to know that all of us are equally equipped to receive information from higher guidance. We're all built the same. The only difference between me and them is I practice harder and more. I
Right.
continue to work to expand my awareness.
Yeah.
And I would encourage them to know that they carry within themselves already everything they need. They don't have to, like we said earlier, they don't have to look outside of themselves.
Mhm. Is there ever a point where individuals are recommended or perhaps instructed to get guidance? Because ultimately, yes, I agree, we can do it alone, but sometimes with so much information, we can be in a place of drowning from it, and maybe the discernment isn't as sharp, and all of those pieces. So, is there ever a point where you would think, yeah, I think you would benefit by getting support from this kind of platform, program, or individual? What would that be?
Well, the bottom line is, I believe that this experience is designed so none of us can do it on our own. That
Mm,
we have to engage with other beings that are here having the same experience. So again, would I ask for guidance about what I need to do next in my life? No. But would I ring up somebody whose spiritual vision I trust and respect to have them take a look at a situation that I feel like I have an understanding of, but I may not be sure because I'm in the middle of the forest?
mhm.
I can't, I'm in the middle of the forest. All I
Right.
can see are the tree trunks. I
That's
can't
right.
see the path forward.
Yes,
But this person is not attached to the outcome.
that's right.
Therefore, they can take a dispassionate view of my situation. And as I'm listening, I'm waiting for the goosebumps of truth to hit me so that I'll know that when they tell me something that's true, oh, that is it.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's how I would strongly suggest people use readers or any other professional consultant.
Hmm. Hmm. It's quite a journey to be open in this space. I mean, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, I think this industry has just catapulted in, be it individuals who I want to say truly are on the path and following their own guidance and their own process, to those who are potentially not.
Mhm.
So individuals wanting to sift out where where is the optimal space and place. You've talked about discernment. What's your take on individuals who were striving to be in this place by using alternate substance? So be it ayahuasca or be it mushroom ceremony or any of those other ceremonies that take you to a certain degree away out of the conscious and control state in physical form.
Um, I will say if that's what they feel they need for their path, I'm not going to condemn somebody
No.
for wanting to do that. So go for it. Again, seek somebody who actually is part of that tradition
Yes.
and do it according to the tradition because there are certain pathways from this world into that world that have been created by other people that have taken those journeys. So you're going to want to go on the wide path that's going to
Right.
take you where you need to go and not on some side branch. So that would be
Hmm.
my first thing. But the
Right.
other point is, I'm living proof that you don't need any of that
Yes.
to have incredibly, trust me, mind blowing experiences while sitting in your living room.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a firm believer of that, but I know a number of people who've crossed my path who speak to ayahuasca and ceremonies and other practices that have, to me, in my language, taken them out of the conscious state
Mhm.
to tap into an energy in a world which can be pretty addictive.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't recommend it because I
Mhm.
know personally it's not needed.
I know, I agree too.
It's
I
not
agree.
needed. All I have to do is have a desire in my heart to know my own magnificence, to
Hmm.
experience the infinite being that I am firsthand.
Hmm.
And if I'm putting that desire out into the universe is going to respond.
That's right. That's right. Ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting process, but I think we can often maybe get caught into that world for those who choose to do it. I've never done it, and I have zero desire
Me
in doing it
neither.
myself.
No.
But I know there are many who are curious to delve into that space, which also leads me to And I feel like you've already answered it by saying discernment, but
Mhm.
the narrative out there in this world of spirituality and connecting with the unseen world is try this and do this and tapping into other cultures and other perhaps belief systems of how they have conducted ceremonies to get into a deeper awareness.
Well, here's what I would say. Um, that if that culture's pathway was supposed to be the pathway my soul wished to travel in order to expand my awareness at the physical level, I
Mhm.
would have been born into that culture. And my soul is created for me in my particular situation, uh, primarily European
Right.
origin body with a touch of Native American in it.
Hmm.
So I have a naturally shamanistic approach to a lot of things that I do that I wasn't even aware was shamanism until somebody said, you're kind of shamanistic in how you do things.
Yeah.
I thought, well, it's in my DNA. It's
Yes.
it's in my physical and my spiritual DNA.
Yeah.
So if it's not, then why would I feel the need? And maybe it comes from the fear of missing something or not making it. And again, I just want to say to people how you were created is perfect according to whatever your soul's intent is.
Hmm.
And you will receive whatever it is you need when you need it. You just have to ask for it and be open to following the steps to take you where it is you're being led.
To do that.
Yeah.
So, so then that also begs the question, what about yogis? The yogi tradition has come into the Western form probably about maybe 2 decades ago, maybe three at the most, and it became mainstream. So the yogic tradition and the belief system and the principles behind them, some have taken, I guess, and truly sat and embedded with individuals who choose to take those classes or take that kind of training, and some not. So for an average non-Indian descent person
Mhm.
going into that space, what does that mean from your perspective?
Now, I am not familiar with those traditions,
Hmm.
but my understanding is a lot of it is like direct transmission of the teachings to the people that are
Hmm.
in the space. And
Hmm.
maybe there's also verbal stuff, but for the most part, it's transmission of a set of teachings. And I know I am my own guru.
Right, right.
I was specifically told by the beings that showed up in my living room here, well, they gave me 7 principles to start. Here are 7 principles. If you live your life according to these principles, you will not need an external teacher and you will be able to achieve your own enlightenment. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did because that's what I was told.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would I never go sit in the room of somebody who's maybe devoted their life to that tradition?
Mm-hmm.
No, just to be able to go and be in the energy,
Mm-hmm.
sympathetic resonance, that could raise my vibration just
Right.
spontaneously. So why wouldn't I take advantage of that?
Sure, sure.
However, the flip side of that is a lot of people give their power to that teacher.
Right,
And remember what I said earlier, that's the one thing no one can take from us.
right.
And then they get disappointed when that teacher turns out to have feet of clay and they're
Mm-hmm.
human just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that everybody is, I'm just saying that that happens a
Sure.
lot.
Yes.
And then the follower gets disappointed in the teacher.
Mm.
And yet that teacher taught them a very valuable lesson about discernment.
Yes. Yes.
So take the lesson and move on, is what I would say.
Yeah. Have you delved into the space or acknowledge and go through the process of reincarnation? Um, in other lifetimes that individuals would have had or you have may have had, and what does that look like based on your knowledge and what you've been downloaded and directed for?
Well, I got certified in past life regression through a couple of different teachers, Dolores Cannon and
Mhm.
another teacher that had just professional hypnosis
Right.
training for past life regression. So I personally believe that at the 3D level, the lifetimes that are before this one would be past, and the ones after this one, in quotes, would be future. But from the
Hmm.
perspective of my soul,
Hmm.
I'm I'm experiencing them all at the same time.
That's right. Yeah.
So what I do in this lifetime also impacts those other lifetimes.
Right.
Can I understand how all of that works? No, but I've had at least, well, I put two of them in the book, but I've had at least at least half a dozen spontaneous recollections of lifetimes that I lived that I know that the person I was looking at was me.
Right.
And I wasn't
Right.
in a female body,
Yes. Yeah.
but I knew I was looking at myself.
Hmm. So what do you do with that information? What do you do with that awareness and knowing and experience? Because while you're looking at and identifying that, yes, that's a version of me or was a version of me, what happens in your physical body at that time?
Well, in the one case, I learned that unexpressed emotions will wait and that they're carried over from lifetime to lifetime
That's right.
because I was laying on a table in a circle of other people who had just gone through the same class with me. Someone was regressing me for their final exam. Poor guy. And poor guy. I became a hunter from 100,000 years ago who was chasing a saber-toothed tiger that had eaten my son. And once the tiger was killed, I, in this lifetime, am laying on this table sobbing
Mm,
because, as chief of the tribe, it's not appropriate to show weakness.
right.
So
Right.
those unshed tears waited, stored in my body
Yeah.
for who knows how many incarnations until they were
Mm,
expressed. That was a
mm,
pretty powerful revelation to have
yes.
that OMG, I'm not only dealing with this lifetime's trauma, that this lifetime is probably set up to create little echoes of things that will stimulate all of these other lifetimes in order to get to
Mm,
the root sadness or the root pain or whatever it
whatever.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow. That's pretty profound.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. Yeah. How viscerally activating that could have been for you on a physical body, on a physical level.
Well, my consciousness is going, I was in an altered state, but also aware that I'm crying uncontrollably in front of people I don't know
Hmm.
in a very uncomfortable situation for me. And then I was also thinking about the poor guy that was trying to get his certificate, and I'm trying to be a good client. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was pretty, but but afterwards, it was profound.
Yeah.
My human mind can't comprehend how all of this is going to work. So
Hmm.
I just put the intent out there. If there's some way for me to clear something that I haven't already, send me the opportunity and I promise to jump in with both feet.
Nice.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, you've had enough practice and you've had enough um, allowance and acceptance to what it
Mm-hmm.
is that comes to you to lean into it and trust it.
Yep.
So there's no deviation there now.
I would
There's no
agree.
gray.
Mm-mm.
When we're in that space, they just, yeah, there is no
There's only
second guessing it.
following. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So you have this courageous book that you released to the world, and thank you for doing that. What else is planned for you, Julia? What else is the next little trajectory of what's next for you?
In a perfect world, I would be doing 3 or 4 day workshops based on the material in the book in the
Mhm.
perfect world. That would allow people to explore the spirit side of life in a non-threatening, comfortable way with other people similarly situated. I mean, that would be my my dream.
Mm,
In the meantime, I will continue to offer classes in how people can learn to identify their own intuitive guidance
yeah,
and other similar subjects, and of course consultations. But yeah, that would be my ideal, would
right.
be able to reach out to people and take this show on the road.
So to speak. Yeah,
And yeah.
good. Do you have a trajectory or a prediction, if you, for the lack of better terms, a prediction, don't really like that word, but a foresight into the world in the world, our world in the energy world? What does that look like for all the intuitives, for all the mediums and the psychics of the world? Where are we going? What's the projection going to look like coming in maybe next year or the coming years ahead?
um I could only share my understanding of things, and I don't know how we're going to get from here to there. I only focus on what my part is
Fair.
because I can't worry about any of the other stuff. I can only do my part.
Yeah.
So my part is to focus on what I'm being guided to do, and then to go forth and do it with all of my energy,
Yes.
so that it cannot be said when I return home that I didn't do my part.
Sure.
The last thing they're going to call me is a slacker. Okay. I'm going to be, I'm on it. Okay.
You are. Yes.
But I will say that I've had an understanding for at least 20 years that 2043, and I never understood until very recently why that year was so important. Everybody would get wrapped around the axle at the year 2000 when all the computers were supposed to break. And so I asked Spirit, so do I need to prepare for this? And they said no, so I didn't. And so,
Hmm.
and then came 2012. So is the world coming to an end now? No. Okay, so I just kept doing what I'm doing because that's what I was told to do.
Yeah.
I believe that the time period that we're entering into now, and for people that are into astrology, they can look at the sign
Hmm.
that Pluto is in.
Right.
Okay, and so now we're coming into a time when Pluto's moving into Aquarius.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that is going to be the time where the water is poured out and a whole bunch of stuff comes to light.
Right.
Will we have reached our transition state by that time? No, I feel like the next generation up until 2043, I feel like 2043 is the actual threshold where we might begin to be able to see a rising of that expanded consciousness and people walking in the world in a different way, interacting with the spirit aspects as opposed to
Hmm.
just the human aspects of each other.
Hmm.
We're still at least a generation away from that. But that's
Wow.
just my own personal
Yeah. I
opinion.
agree. Yeah, I agree. I feel that's the biggest senses of the transition of people stepping into their own gifts a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, the last 4 or 5 years, willingly or unwillingly, has really given many people that 2x4. I don't know. Some of them may have had nails in it. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
potentially. But for many, I think they got that 2x4 in waking up to their own inner wisdom and guidance
Yeah.
to be able to come online and tap into something greater and less focus on the external entities of materialism, even though I'm sure everybody wants to live well, but not be in a space where that is the primary focus rather than flip that the other way around. So, yeah.
The waves of awakening, they are increasing both in size and in frequency.
Yes.
So I'm going to say the amount of time between each wave is compressed now, and each wave has more people waking up.
Yes.
So I see all of that as positive signs and
Yes.
just the operation of how the universe works. It starts out slow, but then it starts to gain steam. So each expansion ring is considerably larger than the one that came before it. So
That's right.
I have hope for humanity. I
Yes.
really do.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting ride over the next little
Mhm.
while, especially for my lifetime.
Mhm.
I'm here for the ride, and boy, it's been a ride so far, and the future projection, it's going to be even bigger. So, yeah, it's
We
beautiful.
just need to do our part.
That's
That's
it.
all.
That's
And
it.
sometimes that means you go to work with happiness in your heart,
That's all.
and you sit there in gratitude and radiate that out to the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big, profound title or educational
Exactly.
system or any of that. I totally agree. Um, Perhaps one of the tipping points for me, if I want to just share, um, a number of years ago, I was driving in the car and I'd been in an experience where I wasn't feeling the warm and fuzzies, as I would say. And as I'm driving in the car, another car is parked relatively close. I'm in traffic. And this little girl sitting in the back seat catches my eye. And she's looking, when we're in a space and you can tell when somebody's looking at you, she was looking at me. So I locked eyes with her and she just smiled so sweetly, so gentle, and so empathetic. It rings true for me even today, and that was probably over 15 years ago. And that story keeps coming up, perhaps for me to share how simple it can be. It doesn't have to be a big, profound thing for us to move through life and just be and have that joy, have that open heartedness to receive and bounce it back. It's really simple. It was a beautiful experience, though.
Well, and I have a feeling that soul was one of the higher vibrating souls that are incarnating on the planet at this time. I almost feel like she recognized who you
right.
were and saw your light
Yeah,
and saw that you saw her.
that's right.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Ultimately, that's it, right? We
exactly.
connect with other people at the same vibrational frequency, whether we're in it at that one moment of time, but often it's with anything in life. We can bypass a traffic, we can bypass an argument or a delayed flight. If it's not in alignment with our vibrational frequency, how we operate through the world, it can pass us right by and we're not even going to blink an eye. And I think that's where the magic is. So, yeah. I'm so grateful for you to write your book. And I'm curious and interested to thumb through it for sure, to learn some of your wisdom that you've garnered at least over the last 30 years. So thank you for sharing it. And thank you for sharing your stories and your journey and your wisdom with everybody who's watching and listening today. So thank you, Julia.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.